never stops poking fun at itself. Craven and screenwriter Kevin Williamson allow their characters to make all sorts of disparaging remarks about the horror movie cliches they're living and dying through. And describing why she doesn't like slasher flicks, Sydney claims that they're all the same. Some big-breasted blonde who can't act, does stupid things. Another character, a video junkie, describes all the gory, real-life events as standard horror movie stuff. There's a formula to it, a very simple formula. Then, as a group gathers to watch Halloween on TV, the same guy recites the 3 rules of surviving a horror movie. Never have sex, never drink or do drugs, and never say, "I'll be right back." Their director doesn't do everything right. The film's self-parody aspects are sometimes too cute, and there are occasions when they dilute attempts at shocks and suspense. This is a horror film designed with movie lovers in mind. Beneath all the gore and violence, there's a lot of both, there's a keen sense of wit and intelligence, which sophisticated viewers are likely to appreciate, and that makes this much more than a common slasher flick. Have fun, and remember that movies don't create psychos, movies make psychos more creative. And that was from James Berardinelli in 1996 on Real Views, talking about the film Scream. Hello and welcome to Total 90s Recall. I'm Molly.
And I'm Chloe.
And on this podcast, between my time on set and Chloe's narrative insight as an editor, we are rewatching 90s films and asking ourselves, are these really as good or bad as we remember, or its reputation implies? And today we are watching and talking about 1996's Scream, the original Scream. Chloe, had you watched this film before?
No, I hadn't. I know. Scream. I hadn't seen Scream before. And I'm not a big horror fan. I don't dislike it. I'm just not naturally drawn to it. I like films with horrific elements or sort of surreal, dark, gothic elements, ghost stories, love all of that. But I'm not someone who absolutely goes for gore.
Same.
I don't love seeing characters in peril, which is kind of integral to the genre. Yeah, and anything with kind of torture or arterial blood sprays, it's not my most favorite thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I think gore fans, they love it for that. They want as much pig's blood as you can possibly chuck at the camera. So there's a bit of a mismatch for me, and I just never went for this, never sorted out.
Yeah, I saw it. I definitely saw it. Did not see it in the theaters. Definitely saw it VHS at like a friend's sleepover. This was the time when I could watch horror movies, pre-Saw, which is really interesting because you talk about the gore, and there is some in this. And I think later I want to talk about the gore scale when we're thinking about today versus then. I definitely didn't watch it in 96. I was 13. I probably watched it, if I had to guess, it was VHS. This came out in December. So I probably didn't watch it until 97, 98 at the earliest.
But that's kind of how it's meant to be seen, isn't it?
Exactly.
On a VHS in a sleepover with you all kind of freaking each other out.
Yes. So. Which this film talks about, which makes it even more fun. But yeah, that's definitely how I saw it and have not watched it in the decade since. Yeah, so this, like I said, this was originally released in the U.S. on December 20th, 1996. Nice little Christmas box office. And in the U.K., May 15th, 1997, it was a $15 million budget, and it was not expected to perform well due to concerns over it being a slasher film in a time for, normally reserved for a holiday entertainment. However, it went on to gross approximately $173 million worldwide through the strength of word of mouth. And as we know, birthed multiple sequels, which we're going to get into. You'll be surprised to hear, Chloe, or not, no Oscars or BAFTA nominations.
Not terribly surprised by that.
Yeah.
And I think, in fairness, just to say to that, obviously the Oscars and those kinds of prestige awards do overlook genre films. And I don't think that's necessarily fair.
Right.
There is obviously a craft to chucking pig's blood at actors and creating the entrails and all of that. And sometimes that's overlooked. But I think maybe things are changing, aren't they? Because they've got a best stunt performance at this year's Oscars.
Yeah.
So I think there is some acceptance that actually genre is not just the kind of the poor relation to the prestige biopics and,
Yeah.
historical dramas.
Well, and there's also Weapons. Amy Madigan is nominated for Best Supporting Actor in
Mm,
Weapons. I haven't seen it. I hear it's amazing. I'll never
yeah.
know because it looks too scary for me. But Hereditary, I think, was one of the tides that turned that narrative because, again, haven't seen it. I want to, or do I? But Toni Collette apparently is amazing in that, and it really is
Mm.
kind of genre changing.
Yes. And a lot of really great critics and Oscar winning film directors love this genre and cite it as their favorite. So I think the thing is that for aficionados in the movie world and critics and so on, this is a genre that means a lot to them.
Yeah.
So clearly I'm missing out, and I, as a result of this, should go and see more horror movies.
Well, and of course, we're actually not talking about the big quote unquote horror movie that's been nominated, the most nominated movie in history, Sinners. Technically, people are
Mm,
like, oh, it's a horror movie, but I like vampire movies, though, is the funny thing.
mm. That's more of a creature feature, I suppose you could say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to me, that's not horror film. And this apparently, Sinners, a lot of people are calling it a horror film. I don't know if that I mean, I don't wanna, like, digress from this conversation, but I do think it's apt because of what Scream did to this genre, but I don't know if Sinners I would consider Sinners a horror film. It's more of
Mhm.
there's a lot with Sinners, which we could literally have a whole side conversation and a whole other episode. But what you may not be surprised is it was named Best Movie, Scream was, at the MTV Movie Awards. Neve Campbell was nominated for Best Female Performance, but she lost Best Female Performance. Do you wanna guess who she lost to? This was the '97 MTV Movie
Okay.
Awards, so it's for a '96 film. It is a film you love.
Okay. Is it Claire Danes
Yes,
as
yes,
Juliet in
yes!
Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's a fair loss.
Yeah.
'Cause, young Molly was like, "No, Claire deserved it." But watching this, I think Neve Campbell did an amazing job, so
She's got to do a lot of screaming. There were a lot of throat sweets involved, I'm sure.
yes. Okay, so stats on the film. Of course, it was as we've already said in the review, directed by Wes Craven, prolific horror film director, Nightmare on Elm Street. He directed all the Scream sequels through Scream 4 in 2011 until he died in 2015. But this was kind of a lull in his career. And then it was written by Kevin Williamson. American audiences will know him best from Dawson's Creek. Well, to me, that's where I was introduced to him is
Mhm.
Dawson's Creek. Was Dawson's Creek as big of a thing here?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, it was.
Okay, good.
Well, at least it was for me. But yeah, I think it was on Channel 4, and it was a big thing for those in the correct demographic. And I very
Yes.
much was.
Yes. Well, and as of the recording, James Vanderbeek just an untimely
Yeah.
passing. But that's where I kinda knew Kevin Williamson's name, but this came before Dawson's Creek. He went on to kind of define teenager films in the '90s with I Know What You Did Last Summer, The Faculty, and he's writing and directing Scream 7, which is coming out in days as you listen to this now, because I know everybody's gonna listen to this as soon as it comes out. This stars Neve Campbell, which to American audiences at the time would have been known from Party of Five. Was Party of Five a thing here?
It was, but I think I was a bit too young for it.
Yeah,
So
ditto.
I sort of only vaguely know what it's about.
Yeah, it was kind of like adult themes. My parents
Mm.
definitely wouldn't let me watch it. This is the same year as The Craft, which she was in. Can't wait to do that episode. Is that a horror film? Because I loved that. Anyway, Courtney Cox subverted her Monica character on Friends. So at this point, she had already been doing that for a few years. There's also David Arquette, Matthew Lillard, Rose McGowan, Skeet Ulrich, and of course, Drew Barrymore. And it was produced by Dimension Films, which was Miramax's horror division. We'll get into it. Chloe, what's the log line for this film?
It is. In the small town of Woodsboro, California, a masked killer known as Ghostface begins murdering high school students, and a group of friends must use their knowledge of horror movies to unmask the killer.
That is a description of the film. Um,
That is, yes.
so a group of friends must use their knowledge of horror movies to unmask the
Is it
I
that
feel like
intentional? I think it's more that
that's my thing.
they comment on it as they
Yes.
go along, isn't it?
I feel like
Yeah.
that might have been the intent when maybe Kevin Williamson wrote it, but that
Mm.
definitely didn't.
The killers unmask themselves.
Yes.
And essentially, Neve Campbell's character is just trying to survive.
Yeah.
She's got, I mean, it's set over maybe about 48, 72 hours, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that, like, the body count is, the rate is high. It's more that all of that discussion of horror movie tropes is kind of running parallel to the events and kind of
Yeah.
interacting with it, as opposed to they're sitting down and being like, right,
Yeah.
what do we know about the killer? You know, the
Yeah.
police are doing that a bit, but not that much.
Not they're like, well, we know in horror films the killer. There's the one character, Randy. He does that. He's like, these are
Mm.
all, and it says it in the review.
They
This is all.
speculate.
Yeah, he speculates. I mean, these are all horror movie tropes, but nobody's really listening to him. He's really talking to the audience, right?
Mm.
So good effort, logline IMBD.
Mm.
But why are we covering this? Well, if you can believe it, it is the 30th anniversary this year of Scream. We have Scream 7 coming out. And so we kind of want to look back at it.
Yeah, it must be doing something right.
It must be doing something right. And it was interesting because the background of this film is Kevin Williamson. He was a horror movie fan. He loved horror movies. And he wrote this, but he didn't think it was actually going to go anywhere. He thought this was actually going to be used to get him other work because he was kind of a struggling screenwriter. And then there ended up being this bidding war that Miramax won. He got between $400,000 to $500,000 for the script, and it revived the slasher genre. So yeah, not bad, Kevin Williamson, for a struggling writer. Love hearing those stories. What was really interesting about this film is how it subverted the genre is it did cast people like Drew Barrymore and Courteney Cox, who were well-known actors. Courteney Cox, again, she's on Friends. She's kind of the height. A lot of the other people were kind of fresh faces, but you have like two big ones in there. And Neve Campbell, again, known, not as big as them, but known to at least American audiences. And then you have Drew Barrymore just dying. Spoiler alert, 30 years later. She dies in the first, 15 minutes, 10 minutes of the film.
I mean, that caught me unawares because she's all over the publicity, the posters, all of that. And so having not seen the film and only kind of really knowing about the film, I genuinely did think that she was going to get away in that first scene, that, she'd be horribly injured, but that she was going to play a big role. And so I think it's interesting because they obviously they played on that at the time of the film's release, and they did that kind of stunt casting in order to wrongfoot the audiences at the time. But it says something about the fact that Drew Barrymore is still such a big star that it hoodwinked me 30 years later.
Yeah. Well, and apparently she was originally cast as Sydney Prescott, Neve Campbell's character. But then she is the one suggested that she recast as Casey because it would surprise everyone and it would make sure everyone knew that no one was safe, which totally works.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I watched this, I wasn't sure Courteney Cox was going to make it. Basically, I wasn't sure anyone would make it except for Neve Campbell. I was like, well, she's surely going to win. She's going to survive.
She'll survive the day. Yeah.
Yeah. But everyone else, I'm like, I don't know.
I mean, the other thing about watching this film now as an adult, knowing so much about its lineage, but having never sat down and watched it before, the thing that surprised me was the tone of the film. And ultimately, particularly in the last sequence, I felt like it was more of a kind of laugh scream than it was a scary scream.
Yeah.
It's very irreverent and it's quite larky towards the end. I mean, it is like, it's almost like panto by the end. It's kind of, it is literally, he's behind you. And the commentary just goes, it just keeps on coming of just like, oh, you got to make sure he's dead. Oh, and he isn't. Oh, and we're going to do it again. And so it's just kind of, it's almost silly.
Yeah.
I was reading up about the film. And so interestingly, they approached a fair few big name directors. So Danny Boyle, Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino, George A. Romero, Sam Raimi. And apparently those directors each read the script and sort of thought, oh, well, it's more of a comedy than a satirical horror. And so then they go with Wes Craven because he's like, he's going to treat it like a horror. they obviously are like, no, it's more horror than it is comedy. But then by the time that they are talking to the Motion Picture Association of America, who's kind of like the BBFC of America,
Mm-hmm.
they're rating it, and they were going to give it something called NC-17,
Yep.
which I understand is like a sort of death sentence for
Yeah.
films. It's like, you have to be over 17 to see it?
Yeah, it's for like, I don't know if you remember Showgirls. Like that was NC-17, and what was that film with Fassbender? I can't remember.
Too sexy for America,
Yeah, it's too
clearly.
sexy. And it means, yeah, it's hard. It means it's too racy. There's probably a lot of sex in it, a lot of gore.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a death sentence
So
kind
they
of for a
wanted
film.
it to get an R rating, which it eventually got. What does an R rating mean?
I mean, what you see, I mean, basically, there's lots of gore, there's lots of sex, there's lots of swear words.
So it's a bit like a 15 over
Yeah,
here.
it might be I think you can see it at 16 or 17.
Okay. So they were arguing for it, and they were basically saying, oh, it's actually kind of more of a comedy than it
Yeah.
is a horror. Like,
Yeah.
take it in that way. And so the Marianne Maddalena, who's the producer on it, said they told the MPAA, hey, this is kind of a spoof. Do you see the humor in this movie? It's a spoof. And they bought it.
Yeah.
And so they're kind of playing it both ways.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting, in that quote at the beginning, like the critics at the time sort of noting that maybe the irony has this quite distancing effect and it dampens the horror. And I definitely found that. It was really meta. It's really self-parodic at times, to the point where I wasn't really afraid. I was at the beginning, so I was like, whoa, this is really gory. I think the beginning is gorier and more horrible. Yes. And I think it's because of that torture aspect of it all being set up, of someone being restrained and of someone being attacked in their own home. That to me felt much more horrific than all the rest of the stuff, which it starts to be more larky. So by the end, I was I was expecting almost to be like a hoax, and for it to be revealed to be a film within a film or something. And the script got Billy going, it's all a movie. It's all one great big movie. Only you can't pick your genre. So that aspect just made me go, it's going to be extra meta. And and we're all going to find out nobody actually died.
For me, I think that's what makes it a little bit more approachable than films later, because you're right. That first scene is, it's probably, for me, that's one of the goriest, if not the goriest scene. And then you kind of settle into things. Yes, Sydney, played by Neve Campbell, gets attacked in her house, but there's kind of a settling for a bit, and then you don't have anything for a while until the principal gets killed. I think it's the principal that's killed is next. And then you get to the last scene, and then it's just like all hell breaks loose. But to your point, it kind of ratchets it up to me in that last scene, because you need a sense of fear. Like when she goes to Dewey's car, you're like, oh my God, because my husband watched it with me too. And we were both like, oh my God, he's behind you. Like, holy crap. Because it was a bit, okay, I can watch this. This isn't so bad. But then by the time you get to that point, it's like, get the fuck out of there. And it was scary. Yeah. And it's funny, originally, this was titled Scary Movie.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until late in the production, they renamed it to Scream. But then Scary Movie was the name of the spoof movies, which
I know. That's,
very meta.
Watching that, I was thinking about the spoofs as well, and thinking, because actually Ghostface, who we learn at the end is actually two guys. Ghostface is pretty inept. Like he's often stumbling. He's often put off.
Yes.
So there are points where actually there are kind of pratfalls.
Yes, this is something I wrote in my notes too, is when he's going against the girls, essentially, you can see how he's a teenager, because he stumbles. He's at one point, I think it's in the last scene or last setting, he's like, oh, like, you hear him go, oh, and all this kind of stuff. But then when he kills the principal, he was really, scary. He went straight for it. And even in the beginning, I feel like the beginning, he's very scary. But then when he's interacting with Sydney and maybe even Tatum, he does act more like a child. And he does not so scary.
I mean, he's done a lot of killing at that point. He must be tired.
Yeah.
And one of them's faked their deaths and stuff. So,
you talk about the satire and how I think Craven he had a unique print on this. And I think without him, you couldn't have had it ride that great line of being scary and a satire. Because the satire, for me, makes it approachable. As someone who's not a big horror film,
Yeah.
the satire makes it approachable. Whereas, like,
Yes.
if you got a Quentin Tarantino or maybe a George Romero, maybe Danny Boyle, I don't know, but, like, I could see it definitely Quentin Tarantino and George Romero, definitely, like, slash, gore,
They
gore,
would lean
gore.
into the horror. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think perhaps I was going to say this later because I think it's really interesting to me that if you made this film now, it would be the lighting would be different.
Yes.
I think the staging would be different. It would just be very dark, like literally dark. There
Yeah.
would be lots of shadows. You would struggle to see things. There would be lots of withholding of reveals. I think the fact that it's very brightly lit and it's set in summer with long, late summer nights.
Yeah.
And everyone's dressed in lots of bright colours. They've got the big light on in all of the rooms.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the difference between a film made then and a film made now in this genre, that everything that is in any way dramatic, and even comedies now they have this kind of really darkness running through them and a realism and shaky cameras and stuff. Whereas this is very much, like a pantomime, like it's very brightly lit. And that is interesting because obviously Wes Craven is serious about his horror, but it's not that shadowy.
Yeah.
I was surprised by that.
Well, to me, it's very 90s. This is a 90s capsule from what they wear, the makeup, like Drew Barrymore's lipstick. I tried to have lipstick like that.
The kind of pearlescent lip gloss at one point.
Loved it. What they're wearing, the video store scene, like that spoke to my heart. It was $50 for a one-night rental of new releases. I was like, I've been there.
Yeah.
This is just a 90s capsule to the T. Casey, in the beginning, they have to go to someone else's house because the phone is being used by Casey, and because they don't have cell phones. And it only in the 90s would the killer be implicated because he has a, quote, cellular phone. They don't say cell phone, they say cellular phone.
Yeah.
So obviously Billy must be a suspect because he has a cellular phone. Or today, just be like, whatever, he has a phone. Everybody has a phone.
Yeah, and I wonder if that reveal where the cellular telephone drops out of his pocket or whatever, whether or not that reveal would land for a teenager watching it today. Because it's kind of like this... it's a bit like almost like finding the murder weapon.
Yes.
Like it's so rare to have
rare.
Even though he kind of bullishly says later, "Oh, everyone's got one of these nowadays," and it's like, no, they haven't, because the police can check all the accounts of all of the people who own a cellular telephone in the entire county within like a day.
Yes.
That would be like millions of people now, I think.
Well, it just goes back to what you're saying, because this is so 90s and this is a 90s capsule in the cellular phone and the clothes and the makeup and the landlines, but in the filmmaking.
Yeah.
But I think it still holds up.
Yeah.
I really liked it. I like that I can see what's happening.
Yes. Well, exactly. That's why it's a good thing. Yeah. I don't know if you had it in America, but back in the day when you used to go to the cinema in the 2000s, they used to have this promotion called Orange Wednesdays. So there used to be this phone network called Orange, and they used to do a sort of 2-for-1 on a Wednesday, and it was great. And they used to run adverts for this at the beginning after the trailers in the cinema. The premise was that there's this movie executive who keeps on trying to stick a promotion for Orange telephones into a famous director's film or a screen. So they had a whole range of famous people. I think at one point they maybe had like Robert De Niro or someone in these ads. And the whole thing is that the executive's like, yeah, we'll greenlight your movie, but how about the bad guy calls him on his mobile phone? And the director's going, no, it wouldn't work, so that would ruin the story. And so the tagline was, don't let a phone ruin your movie. And so it was telling you about the promotion, but also saying, turn off your phones.
Yes.
Because it was now a new social problem that people were talking on their mobile phones in the cinema. And so I always think of like, don't let a phone ruin your movie, because it's a good plot point. Like, it's when Sydney is on her own, she can't just call for help.
No.
When she is alone, she is alone. And that idea of you are truly on your own, you are isolated, is a really kind of a perfect thing. And actually mobile phones do kind of ruin stories now, because it's like,
Yes.
well, why didn't she just call for help? Those were the days when you still couldn't call for help,
Yes.
and you have to use your own resourcefulness to get out of this one.
Yes. Well, and I think the locations also add to that. That last setting, the last, I don't know if I want to call it scene, but at Stu's house, that was actually an abandoned home, or
Mm.
people weren't living there, but they wanted something that was very far away, and so it would seem you are on your own.
Yeah.
In Sydney's home, again, to your point, she feels very like on her own, away from everything, kind of like in a castle.
Yes, her father is giving her information about the hotel he's going to stay at, because she's not going to be able to just text back and
Yeah.
forth between him. He's going to have to be in a particular location to get in touch with her. And when she's on her own, she's just got the house phone
Yeah, which her house
and the
definitely
internet.
looks. Yes, and the internet. Her house, again, very 90s. Those
Yes.
sofas, like, just everything about it was just so 90s. I was like, "Oh, I wanna
Yeah.
live in this home."
Yes, but not without the masked killer running
Without
amok.
without the murderer running around, yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see it as that time capsule. I will say, at the beginning, I think my actual nightmare in terms of horror is having someone make me answer questions to a horror movie trivia quiz under pain of death. Like, I feel stressed when you ask me who won the MTV Movie Award. And that's with a big hint.
Is this where I tell you, "Chloe, I got a quiz for you in this episode." I'm just kidding, I don't.
And I'm watching you right now through the window.
I'd be like, "Oh
Yeah.
my god, let's go." But yeah, horror films, I would not be good at.
I would be hopeless at this, yeah. But this is great. This is a primer for the rules of scary movies. And so they, as in the quote at the beginning, that thing of like, you never say who's there, you can't have sex, no drink or drugs, you never say I'll be right back. All of these are death sentences. And so, yeah, that kind of aspect of, we're going to tell you the rules as you go through,
Yeah.
and then play them out.
Yes, and we never see Sydney and Billy have sex. We actually
No.
never see her drink, I don't think.
No, but it's clear that they have.
Yes.
Hasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very funny. To me, it is a strange quirk of American and I guess Western culture that we can see any amount of violence.
Yes.
We can see people's innards splashed across the screen, but we cannot see sex. And which is the more natural act? What is closer to God? Apparently, monstrous violence is.
Sex gets you an NC-17 rating in
Yeah,
America.
wow.
Specifically, like, women's pleasure back in the day. And then to your point, just people getting killed and slashed in the worst ways and
Yes.
still getting R ratings. So on that note, when you're watching this and you're thinking about, all the reviews at the time were like, "Oh, this is gory, this is gory."
Yeah.
Was it gory for you?
The first scene is.
Yeah.
And again, I think what strengthens the horror in that is the restraining of the boyfriend. He's tied up, and then he's then revealed to have his guts kind of ripped out. And the kind of the fact that Drew Barrymore's character is keeps on trying to survive, and then she's being slowly hacked at.
Yeah.
And then the reveal of her to her own mother
Ooh.
being hanged from the tree with all her guts hanging out. We should probably put a warning at the top of this. But
I mean, it's a horror slasher film.
it's horror, but it's funny horror.
Yeah.
So yes, I think I was surprised at that.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned Saw earlier on. And for me, Saw is my absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
I hate it so much. And what I hate about it is that kind of the horrible choice aspect. It just worms into my brain. I'm like, ugh, I'd hate to choose between, I don't know, my face and saving someone else's life or God knows what. And it's moralistic. I hate it.
Yeah.
And also it's the torture element. I cannot stand watching scenes of torture.
Torture porn.
Torture porn, exactly. And so that aspect upsets me way more than just a quick slit of the throat.
Yes.
Which is not pleasant to see, but blood coming down the windscreen of the van. I'm like, it's not that upsetting. But what do you
Yes.
think? Did you find that too much?
So this is my husband and I were like, oh, it'll be interesting to see if we think it's that gory. And that first scene, I'm like, oh my God, this is still gory. But I think that is the worst scene for
Mm,
me. Although the poor cameraman who gets his throat slit and then
mm,
his blood is like going down the van, I still don't think it was that gory. And even the boyfriend, you actually don't see him get his guts slit. It just reveals it, and it reveals it quite quick. To
mm,
me, I felt, yes, this was gory. There are gore moments, but it's not gore for gore's sake. It's not gore porn. It
mm,
makes sense. You need to have stakes. The stakes need to be high. You need to be afraid. You need to be afraid for these characters. You need to root for them. There needs to be a sense of death. And I think
mm,
it does that. I think it really does a very fine line of, telling a story, taking itself seriously. Like, even though it's a satire, what I like about it is not like wink, 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 ha, 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 we know this. It does that, but in a very smart way. And I think,
mm.
again, that is a combination of Kevin Williamson's script and Craven directing. But the gore is earned, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Whereas something like Saw, I'm with you. I think Saw is where it just ended for me. I saw it. I did not like it. I guess I'm glad I saw it to inform my film experience and knowledge or whatever. But also, am
Mm.
I? I don't know, because it's just
I'd
gore
like
for
to erase it from my
I
brain.
know. It's just gore for gore's sakes. And that's why
Yeah,
I don't like a lot of horror films. I
yeah,
think I stopped between that and the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Ring, which I don't know if Ring's not really gory, but it's just more scary. But between those,
yeah.
I was just like, I'm done. I'm
I don't
done.
mind suspense. I think
Yeah.
I just don't like torture. I hate torture.
Yes. Torture porn.
And I don't like scenes of sexual violence
Yes.
and so on. I accept their inclusion when they have a storytelling purpose,
Yeah.
but often so much torture and sexual violence is there for just for shock value. I'm with you on that. I would say I think they probably tried to get a bit more gore in and had to make
I
cuts for
think
the
you're right.
MPAA. So
Yeah.
I think that it was the censors restraining them rather than Wes Craven being like, "Oh, I won't have. I'll only have a few frames of
Yes.
the
Fair
boyfriend's
enough.
guts."
Fair
I
enough.
think there was probably a bit more in the original cut. Maybe we shall see that someday.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I don't remember if there's a director's cut of that one. There's some of other ones, but I don't remember if
Yeah,
it was
and
of this one.
I think apparently they had a lot of problems with the lighting and the filming. They were using a lens that they hadn't, that neither Wes Craven or the DOP had used before, I believe. And so they didn't have a lot of usable footage. And so apparently they got a couple things through on the censors just because they were like, we actually just don't have any other
Yeah.
shots to use.
That's
So
great.
I think there was an element of that as well. But I think it's interesting that kind of, I guess, leans onto this question of moral panic
Mm.
and the themes of violence. Because of the film being so sort of self-referential, it almost slightly passed me by these characters are real in their world to some degree. As I say, I was wondering if it was all going to be revealed as fake or something.
Yeah.
But they have a long conversation in the kitchen when Sydney is being mortally threatened
Yeah.
about why do this? You know,
Yeah.
why team up with your best friend and menace society? And they start going down this route of there is no motive, and isn't that scarier? And then Billy does say he does have a motive, which we can get into. But it's sending up that idea that watching violence creates violence. And I thought it's interesting to look at something from 30 years ago because we're still having that conversation.
Yes.
And expect as a parent, you are kind of approaching that in a different way because many of us feel a responsibility, like, what are our children watching?
Yeah.
But then when you get into the question of think of the children, it does start edging into that kind of moralism that is not entirely substantiated. Apparently, there aren't any studies to prove that watching or playing video games or whatever that's violent leads to violence.
Yeah.
There isn't any like scientific data to prove that. And yet it's one of those things that you feel is true.
Yeah.
And I wonder, like, the immersiveness of video games. Like, once upon a time in the 90s, the graphics were not convincing.
Yeah.
But now everything, you've got virtual reality, you've got social media, which control is with you all of the time, and there have been incidences of real life violence being live streamed on social media.
Yeah.
Can violent media affect you? At the time, Scream was blamed for real life violence, but how much of an actual causal link was ever established, I don't know. But I think it's interesting. What is your feeling on that massive question?
It's a great question. It's kind of an eternal question, as you said. After the Columbine shooting in 99, that was a big discussion. Like, were video games causing these boys to do this? Bowling for Columbine, kind of by Michael Moore, touches on that. And we talked about this in our Trainspotting episode, how Kubrick pulled Clockwork Orange. He volunteered to do that because there was a trip. Apparently, people were doing copycat crimes. I think, does art reflect life, or does life reflect art? I mean, this is this internal question, and I don't have an answer.
No.
I definitely will say that I do find it interesting. So Kevin Williamson, before Scream, his first film that script he sold was called Killing Miss Tingle. And it didn't release until 99. And they changed it because of Columbine to Teaching Miss Tingle. So that's where I think the violence of the real world is affecting what's happening in the movies.
Or is it the case that the kinds of people who would kill people who are violent would seek that stuff out anyway, and so it's the other way around, if you see what I mean? And that obviously the film has its point of view, and Billy says, and it's quoted in the review, movies don't create psychos, movies make psychos more creative, which is a very flippant way of addressing it. But I would say, I think that films are maybe different to games. And obviously I'm biased because I don't game. So what do I even know what I'm talking about? So take that with a big pinch of salt. But the reason why I would say this is because most horror films, even if they're horrid, are I would say they're not desensitizing you to violence because they're narratively placing you alongside the victims, because that's the most suspenseful aspect. And so you're identifying with the victim. And I think it's really interesting. I thought about this a lot since I heard Mark Como talk about it. And obviously he's an amazing film critic, but he is a massive horror and gore fan. And yet also, if you ever listen to his reviews, he is always talking about how he cries at, the soppiest films. So he's a softie as well, but he loves gore.
Yeah.
And he talks about how horror fans are actually masochists. So I've got this amazing quote from him where he says, "It's often assumed that horror movies have this misogynistic edge. They represent a male gaze, terrorizing women. But one of the most interesting things about horror is that viewers don't identify with the people you expect. As a lifelong horror fan, I've always felt that the genre wasn't sadistic, but masochistic in an entirely healthy way." I'm not sure if it's healthy, but it's that kind of thing, like you're playing out your nightmares, and that thing of being attacked at home. That is scary. Like when I've been home alone at times, there have been points where I've been like, I'm just going to check that everything is
Oh my gosh,
locked.
all the time.
I think that statistically, I'm very unlikely to be murdered by a serial killer or anything.
Yeah.
I live in a safe area, but I'm just going to make sure it's locked. So I think that is a really interesting aspect to it that often gets lost in that debate.
Yeah, I don't know why this made me think. It made me think of, how women are the number one listeners of like crime podcasts. You could almost say that's masochistic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or is it that we're trying to prep ourselves? Like, right.
I think it's that.
If I were in this situation, I would want to make sure.
I think it's that.
Yeah.
I want to be aware of if somebody's suspect.
It's about control of our own safety.
I really think it is. And I think on that note, the feminist lens of this film, it's as I think I said before, it's really when the killers interact with the girls that you can tell they're high schoolers, right? Yeah. They're clumsy.
Yeah, Sydney's got a great right hook.
She's got a great right hook. And look at Halloween, the series. It's Jamie Lee Curtis's character that wins always, survives the day.
Yeah, you're never left in doubt that the final girls are besting their attackers, and there's a real sense of kind of triumph to,
Yeah.
Courtney Cox and Neve Campbell's kind of clubbing together. There is obviously another character, is it Randy, I think, who's...
The friend at the
Yeah.
video store, yeah.
Yeah, I think he's sort of also left as a survivor at the end, but he's a bit peripheral, really.
Yes.
And I think it's very intentional. We can debate whether it is, but I think it's talking about violence against women throughout, isn't
Yeah.
it? And it starts off, there's this kind of contrasting with the film's arguably empowerment of female characters versus what Sydney is saying about typical horror movies, where she says some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be running out the front door. It's insulting.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point she does have to run up the stairs, but
Yes,
she has
exactly.
no choice. Maybe she'll rethink that opinion. Yeah, it's two women at the end against two guys.
Yeah.
And the women win, albeit very traumatically at the end. But there's that slut shaming that's going on throughout with Sydney's mum.
Yes.
That's always coming
I was
up.
going to say that.
Lots of characters are sort of basically using Sydney's mother's affair to almost justify the fact that she was murdered.
Well, I feel like it was only Billy who did that.
I think
Because-
though that I think maybe the cheerleader in the bathroom references it.
Oh,
I don't
you're
know.
right.
I think there's
No,
a few
you're right.
people
Yeah. I forgot
that
about
talk
that.
about it.
Yep.
But Billy certainly does, and that kind of callousness I get about women, and like, you get what you deserve.
Yes.
And it makes that point really specifically about virginity and how
Yes.
horror movies have this bizarre attitude that you must be a virgin,
Yeah.
otherwise you'll be killed for wanting to have sex.
Yeah.
Then on the other hand, Sydney and Tatum are having a discussion about how Sydney is sexually anorexic, as in traumatized by her mother's apparent rape and murder.
Yeah, that she witnessed.
Yeah,
So I think she's allowed.
exactly. And Sydney's blamed by Billy, who obviously is revealed as the killer,
Yep.
for not getting over it quickly enough.
I know. Like, let's talk about Billy and what an asshole he is, because you said it. He's very callous. He enjoys talking about her mother's death and how she's never been the same and she just needs to get over it, knowing that he's the one that killed her.
Yeah.
And
He's manipulative to a T. Yeah.
Manipulative to a T, and this like gaslighting of her, essentially.
Yeah.
I did laugh at the, can we just do over the clothes stuff? Or maybe she said that. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
That was like, to me, that as a 90s kid and as a kid who was a late bloomer, over the clothes stuff really spoke to me. But he just gaslit her throughout, and he's like guilting
he even
her.
fakes his own death.
Fakes his own death, guilts her into having sex with him.
Guilts her for thinking that he might be the killer when he is actually the killer.
Yes. And to that conversation you're talking about, she's like, oh, he's just been so great since my mother died, and understanding that I don't want to have sex. I mean, most guys wouldn't put up with this. And honestly, to me, that's very 90s. Like, that was very much a thing, even like early 2000s. I don't know, maybe it's a thing today too. But this idea, girls should be grateful when guys don't pressure them to have sex.
And that they owe them sex. You know, like men, that there's a brilliant quote. I'm sorry for whoever said it, but I think it's like an internet meme even, that, women are not slot machines that you put affection coins into and get sex out of.
Yeah.
So there is that entitlement to sex that he has. But do you think the film owns that view? Or is the fact that this monstrous male has that view and he's revealed to be terrible, he's the killer at the end, is the film not kind of almost sending up that entitlement and by the same token sending up the kind of frigid virgin / whore double standards that these films indulge in? Is it owning those views, or is it actually kind of taking the piss?
Well, I think the fact that Billy ends up being the killer and an asshole, I think it's saying, fuck this guy. Don't believe anything he said. You were right all the time.
Yeah. Sydney does subvert the rule. She breaks the rule by having sex. We're pretty sure she does have sex with Billy, which, again, years of therapy to come from that. I had sex with my mother's killer, and then he tried to kill me and all my friends. But yeah, she survives, and she survived to film 7, because Neve Campbell
Yes,
is back with
she's
Courtney
back.
Cox. But yeah, I mean, I think because the film is having this meta discussion about sex equals death, got the boys joking about, oh, here comes the obligatory tit shot in the film they're watching. And then that's intercut with Sydney and Billy making out, her taking off her top, all of that. I think it's playing with that rather than believing in
Totally.
it.
But you actually never see her bare breasts. You only see her bra.
No.
And you never see them
No.
have sex. Obviously, they did because he's like, "How do you feel now?" But yeah, Billy he's the worst. He's the worst.
He's the worst, but it's interesting. I mean, it's interesting also because it's Kevin Williamson, and in Dawson's Creek, the one thing I remember is the question of when and how should one lose one's
Yes.
virginity, and to whom is the most vexed thing that occupies most of the characters, particularly Dawson's
Yes.
mental space for season after season after season. And so Kevin Williamson and that idea of sex and virginity, I think is a preoccupation in his writing, as it is for teens. He just knows teens.
Yeah, I will say it was, going back to the feminist lens, I really liked seeing kind of the turn Sydney had, because throughout this whole film, she's fighting for her life and she's doing really good, but she's still like this innocent, like, what is she going to do? Even the nightgown that she's wearing at the beginning of the film, oh, you wear this to bed? Yes, now go away.
I know.
But then I
It's
thought
like
it
it's
was
a 12-year-old girl.
Yes. I thought it was very clever, that scene in the kitchen where you see her turn. You see her being like, "Okay, I'm done with this shit."
Yeah.
That was one turn that I really enjoyed.
I definitely agree. She has to do a lot in that performance, and more so than just simply screaming or fighting back.
Because you want to root for her, not just because you're like,
Yeah.
poor Sydney, but you want to be like, yes, girl.
Yeah. And I like the fact that she is more of a kind of down to earth, less girly girl
Yeah.
teen. She's sort of dressed in sort of jeans, denim and jumpers and things. But her best friend is a much more of a kind of Cher Horowitz
Yes.
type girly girl with all the lip gloss and the little mini skirts and so on. But we're never kind of made to kind of pick one or
Yes.
think one is a bubblehead or whatever.
Yeah.
Like Tatum is pretty kind of, she's mean, but she's tough as
Yes.
well. And she gives up a good fight against Ghostface as well.
Yes.
She has a horrible demise. But
I know. Poor Tatum. She's a good best friend, and I was sad to see her go.
Sad to see her go.
She
indeed.
almost didn't make it into the film because apparently she auditioned for the film. This is Rose McGowan I'm talking about. But her agent at the time was going for a large sum of like 200 or 250,000 for her pay, where everybody else was getting around 100,000, except for Neve Campbell. She reportedly made 1.5 for the first one. And so it pissed the producers off, specifically Harvey Weinstein. And this is before she met him. She had never met him yet. We would learn other things about them later, more him than her, obviously. But he made her audition twice, and then he refused to give her any more than 50,000 for her role.
50,000 to get killed in a garage door
Yes.
is not enough, I would
Not
say.
enough, no. But it lost her career. Speaking
Yeah.
of casting, okay, so we know Barrymore was originally going to be Sydney, but it didn't happen. Is there anyone else from like the 90s, maybe even the 80s, you would think could be a good casting?
I believe Molly Ringwald was initially
Yes.
asked, but she considered herself too old because she was
Yes.
in her late 20s by that point. But she was very much kind of queen of teen in the 80s. I think Brittany Murphy was up
Yep.
for it as well. So, yeah.
I could see her maybe more in the Tatum role.
Yeah, I think it's partly that kind of blonde thing, but
Yeah.
she can, I think, 'cause she was in Sin City, another film
Yes.
that absolutely revels in gore and horrible
Yeah.
violence and nastiness towards women. But she's got a bit of a kind of, she's playing a gangster's mole in that, I think, and she's quite sort of nerves of steel. So I could see her getting into the Sydney role as well, but
Yeah. Which apparently Rose McGowan is the one that suggested Tatum have blonde hair. She and Neve Campbell, has dark hair
yeah.
naturally. But Reese Witherspoon was also considered, but
Yeah.
deemed to look too young compared to the rest of the cast.
Yes, and I suppose, I don't know, I think she's so sweet, and
Yes.
so she's more, to me, she is more rom-com than kind of Scream queen.
Yes.
But maybe someone is going to email and say, no, she was in this role, and have you
Well, I'm
forgotten about...
thinking of, oh gosh, Election. You know, she plays kind
Yeah.
of a crazy.
She's quite kind of manic, but she's still kind of like perfect.
Yes,
Is in that, isn't
that's
she? Yeah.
true. And I think really, more recently, Reese has done a better job of kind of playing not innocent characters. I'm thinking like pretty.
Like down to earth characters.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Yeah.
at this time, I think she probably did look too young. And then with Courtney Cox, Craven apparently didn't want to cast her originally. And she really wanted it because she wanted to go against her typical casting of, Monica for Friends. She was in Family Ties. And apparently she wrote him she wrote him a letter that said it really wouldn't be too much of a stretch to play a bitch. So I like that.
Fair enough.
That. And then David Arquette, he auditioned for like a couple of the younger characters, but he was attracted to the role of Dewey. And it was originally written as like a dumb jock. And he's the one that interpreted it as a position of authority, trying, getting no respect. And he wants to be John Wayne. And I love that line. I love at first you don't know him and Tatum are, brother, sister.
Yeah.
And when they're first introduced, and then he's like, what did mom tell you? When I wear the uniform, I'm the man of the law. And it's like nothing says like you're not really a man than saying you're the man of the law.
Yeah, and he's absolutely, Courtney Cox's character absolutely sort of twists him round her little finger.
Yes.
So I was thinking to myself, is he going to be revealed as Ghostface? Because he'd be the one you least expect.
Yes.
So, I was sitting there going, who is the killer? But I don't think Kevin Williamson was.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. So did you were you surprised it was Billy and Stu?
I think that's probably why I found it a little bit tiresome by the end, because I was like, oh, well, we've suspected him twice already. And oh, so he is. It just feels, I felt a bit gaslit. I was a bit like, oh, well, all right then. I mean, it makes sense. But then it is what it is. I mean, apparently Kevin Williamson based Billy and Stu, he based them on real life teen killers who were lovers, I think, from the 1950s or something. So he was kind of inspired by a kind of a pair of killers. So I think the twist that it's a pair of them, because I mean that actually you're like, oh, he does have a way of just being there
everywhere.
in impossibly, being everywhere at once. So that, I think that's a good twist. And, Agatha Christie would be proud of that. But I think I was expecting a few more clues to rack up.
Yeah. I did like that scene in the video store. And I think it's because I knew who it was because I've seen this. I don't know if I would have clocked this if I'd never seen it. But when Randy, who is like, the big film fan, he works in the video store, and he's standing between the two of them, it reminded me of these two hyenas, especially because Stu is so like laughing all the time and everything's a joke to him.
Yeah.
And it was almost like two hyenas or two predators with their prey in between them. And I thought I really liked that, just that shot.
And
that
actually,
was very smart.
That moment is highlighted by one of the critics who was sort of pointing up the kind of homoeroticism. Because I think, I can't remember which character it is, one of them kind of tweaks, I think, Randy's earlobe. And it's quite an intimate gesture. So there's a sexual element to the crimes throughout. Kevin Williamson, looking back on the film, sort of said, you know, there are kind of gay themes hidden in the film, which he wasn't necessarily aware of, even though, he wasn't able to kind of openly write about, and maybe it was sort of subconscious.
Yes, and we should mention he's a queer. He's a gay man.
Yeah. So here's a quote from him where he says, "As a gay kid, I related to the final girl and to her struggle because it's what one has to do to survive as a young gay kid too."
Yeah.
Subconsciously, I think the Scream movies are coded in gay survival. So that's interesting. But I think also what's very interesting is obviously a lot of horror movie fans, are gay. They like, it's a big thing in the queer community. And I think that's interesting. Is it just about the survival aspect that Kevin Williamson's talking about, or is it also about that kind of outsider aspect that sometimes you see online, queer communities talking about how much they love the villain. So they're like, love a Disney villain, partly because of how outre they are, but also maybe that kind of outsider aspect. And And Billy is styled a bit like James Dean, who is like one of the ultimate queer icons of Hollywood cinema.
Yeah.
So there's all these different layers that smarter critics than I have pointed out, and I am now presenting to you as if it were my own idea. It is
I
not.
think it's brilliant. You're brilliant, Chloe.
What can I say? I've got multiple views on this film.
Speaking of Billy, Vince Vaughn was the
I can see
studio's
that.
choice
Yeah.
for him, but he was too ill to audition.
Oh,
Skeet Ulrich, because of his face,
yeah.
you kind of are like, well, like he seems like he's the killer, but he's obviously not the killer. Like he
Yeah.
seems like a good guy. And I
Yeah.
think if it was Vince Vaughn, I'd be like, he's definitely the killer.
He's very ambiguous, isn't he? Because the slit
Yes.
back hair, he could be very knowing, or he could be a boy. You know, he kind of plays on both aspects of his look, which I think is interesting.
So anything else we want to say before we get to the awards?
Mostly just shout out to the fact that the Fonz plays the principal.
Yes. Oh, yes. And that was, I'm so glad you brought that up because that was apparently a favor to his agent.
Yeah.
Because I think he and either Wes Craven or Drew Barrymore at the time shared an agent. And speaking of Wes Craven, he's the janitor.
Yes.
In this, yes.
Well,
You were-
I was gonna bring that up later, but like
yeah?
Scream itself, it always has to anticipate its surprise later on. So, spoiler
Okay.
alert.
Oh. Okay. So, Chloe, what do you think aged well or aged terribly?
Okay, in terms of what aged terribly, Harvey Weinstein on the credits.
Yep.
We'll have to tread carefully for libelous comments here, but apparently the Weinsteins were pretty heavy-handed, to say the least, in the kind of the pressure they put on the filmmakers in terms of creative decisions. And obviously all that very kind of vexed history between Rose McGowan and Harvey Weinstein, you know, watching that in that context, in that light, it adds another layer that I would have had no
Yes.
clue about if we hadn't just gone through this terrible time with Me Too, and all of these terrible men have been exposed. So that's aged badly. The other thing, I'm not sure if this is aged badly or well, but I kept on thinking to myself, why they don't seem to be having much use out of caller ID, and that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And apparently the use of caller ID went up by 300% after Scream's release. Again, a thing that's very 90s, because nowadays, unless it is a withheld number, in which case, why would you ever answer it?
Yes.
But generally speaking, it wouldn't be a problem now because the person who's calling you would come up on your phone.
Yeah. I think you said it, the Weinstein of it all. He was known for cutting up films and putting a lot of pressure on filmmakers. So yeah, that hasn't aged well.
He produced a lot of films in the 90s, so
We're going to be talking about a lot of Harvey Weinstein films, unfortunately. I think overall the film aged well. I think what didn't age well, besides the Harvey Weinstein, is the gaslighting and the sex baiting by Billy. I don't know if it didn't age well, or now that I'm an adult watching this, it just cringes me out. And I'm just like, no, girl.
But then I think that's an in-story thing.
Yeah.
I think probably still happens. I think that sense of entitlement is probably had a massive resurgence in the last few years, thanks to Andrew Tate and so on, like women are just objects to be used by men, is a very mainstream belief now.
But do you think that would be in a film today?
Yes, I think so. But I think it would be more...
You think so?
I think maybe...
To show the disgust of the character?
I think the female character would call it out and say that's gaslighting, and wouldn't be left kind of going, am I sexually anorexic?
Yes,
Which is like
exactly.
an offensive term on several levels. But
Yes.
and you know, the cheerleader in the bathroom that she's also really saying some horrific things. There's zero female solidarity from her perspective.
Yeah.
So I think it would probably be treated in a different way, but I do think that, to give Kevin Williamson his credit, I don't think that he owns that view. And so I think he's representing it in order to critique it, or at least to expose it, as opposed to being like, ha ha, yes, and of course she should be spreading her legs for him.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think he's almost saying it, this guy's a gross, like, he's not a good dude. But yeah, maybe the better thing is what didn't age well is Sydney's response to it, calling herself sexually anorexic. I don't think that aged well.
But again, characters are allowed to be unsure of themselves.
Yes,
And yeah,
absolutely.
and I think that is very believable just as much, because I think
Yes.
teenage girls live in a hellscape in which they are constantly being manipulated,
Yes.
and they're being raised by the internet. So
Yes.
they probably a lot of teenage girls are a bit like, am I basically an object for men's pleasure?
Well, I mean, I'll admit up until probably I was like 30 almost 30, maybe like it was late 20s definitely. I realized I had this like unhealthy like I needed male validation. That's where
Hmm.
like found my validation is through men. It wasn't conscious. I didn't like I don't think if you were to look at me on the outside it was like throwing myself. But when I just think about how, whether it was like somebody was dating or somebody was in a relationship and how that affected me and,
Yeah.
like, how I felt about myself, and
Mm.
then, yeah, you get older and you're like, "Fuck this,"
Well, I
you
think it's
know?
also, we are now a bit more empowered. We have words, we
Yes.
have phrases to
Yes.
describe the behavior. So I
Yeah.
think that idea of mansplaining, it's overused now, but that I like, it's really useful. It was quite kind of revelatory to have that word to understand what's going on, because when you're at a party, when you're a young woman and you say something that's halfway intelligent or just an opinion or something, and
Yes.
the guy you're talking to agrees with you and then repeats it in a different phrasing, and then
Yeah.
tells you exactly what you think, but as if it's new to you.
Yes.
Now we can go, that's mansplaining, or we can go, this is a man being patronizing,
Yeah.
and I don't actually need a man to validate my opinion.
Yeah.
But at the time, because of the cultural world we were living in, I think there was an element of, you could be a bit like, a man has agreed with me, that I must be right. And also, I
Yes.
think it's about being young. When you are young, you might be used to other people telling you you're right, and you being like, gold star for me.
Yeah,
Because you are a
absolutely.
child, you are learning,
Yes, and you're seeking validation from your peer
Yeah.
group. Okay, so what is the most 90s moment, line, or scene?
Oh, well, I cannot choose but one.
I know!
It's the
Yes.
most 90s film yet. There's the
Yes.
Indigo Girls poster on Sydney's
Yes!
wall. There's the very wholesome interiors that you're talking about: net curtains, chintzy floral wallpaper, cushions, la la la. Um, there's the fact that so many teen characters are very happy to answer the house phone. Like,
Yeah.
and I think the existence of a house phone is obviously like that's aged badly.
I
um,
know.
but for modern teens, I mean, there's this thing, and I don't know if it's entirely fair. Apparently, a lot of them won't answer the phone unless they know who it is. That might actually be the scariest aspect for them all.
Yeah.
Like, they'd be absolutely terrified watching that first moment where Drew Barrymore was picking up the house phone without any clue who was talking to her.
Yes.
And this film would validate their fears.
Yes.
You mentioned the VHS rentals.
Yep.
For you, that must have been quite a ritual. For me, I didn't have access to a rental, a Blockbuster or anything as a child, because I didn't live near anywhere to do that. But for me, that aspect of going to a sleepover and my friends
Yes.
had rented the videos,
Yeah.
it's a time capsule.
Yes.
I think certainly when the girls are discussing rewinding and freeze framing all the right moves at just the right moment to see Tom Cruise's penis. Well, all I can say is, I mean, it's not something that me and my friends ever did with any
No.
films on any sleepovers.
Definitely not.
No.
Not for us.
So, yes. And obviously there is Tatum's very cute little jumpers and her little minis. And then you've got Sydney's kind of denim and her jumper outfits, and Courtney Cox's amazing skirt suits.
So short.
One of them's got
so short.
buttons down the back. I mean, yeah. And then the last thing I would say is the font on the credits. So they take me back. So the font, I did some research. The font on the credits is called Confidential, and that is the one that is used in the "You Wouldn't Steal a Car" anti-piracy campaigns that you used to get on DVDs. Now, I went deeper into this.
Okay.
In April 2025, Sky News reported that old campaign PDFs had used a font that was called X-Band Rough, which is a widely distributed pirated version of the font Confidential. So this was this controversy at the time of actually the anti-piracy campaigns used a pirated font. However, another investigation exonerated the anti-piracy filmmakers and said that the rip-off font was used in an unrelated campaign. So there we are. But when I saw that font, I went, I know that font. I know that font. You wouldn't steal a car.
It's the appropriate font for Scream in that case. But yes, no, the beginning is so 90s. The end is so 90s. And I said the same thing. I said everything. This is a 90s capsule. As already said, Drew Barrymore's lipstick, the computer, the fact that you're a murder suspect because you have a cellular phone. The word cellular phone. Yeah, they don't know until they get to school what's happened.
Yes.
You know, there is no social media. There's no text messaging yet.
Yeah. Which is all good for the story because it means a character says it rather than having to come up on the screen.
Yes. Everything from now on should be a 90s period piece.
Yes.
All films moving forward.
Yeah. Agreed.
Any awards you would give Scream?
I would say most surprising killer weapon. I'm going to go with Death by Jamie Lee Curtis, because when the TV is falling and electrocutes the killer, it's Jamie Lee Curtis on the screen.
Nice.
But honorable mention to the umbrella, which sort of offs Billy, but he comes back to life about twice more. So,
which apparently, FYI, Stu is not confirmed to die. It was ambiguous. And I thought he died. The only reason I know that is apparently he's coming back in Scream 7.
Not in a flashback. Okay.
Not in a flashback. Well, I don't know, maybe, but it seems like he's not dead. I don't know. He's coming back.
Dedicated to her work, Gail Weathers, doing a report at the end with a new crew, despite nearly dying, despite her camera guy dying.
And they come so quickly. The new crew is just there.
They're just there at her beck and call. She's going to get that Pulitzer, whether she, whether or not it kills her. Most 90s throwback song. For me, it was Republica's Drop Dead Gorgeous. I was like, I haven't heard this song in an age and a day. Great use of that. It's on in the party scene. And then Is That Wes Craven award for Wes Craven as the janitor dressed as Freddy Krueger. He's called Fred in it. Fred the janitor.
He is called,
and he also wore the Ghostface costume in the opening sequence.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which we should have mentioned, the guy that so they had a separate actor to record Ghostface, and he never actually met the rest of the crew. And when Sydney and Drew Barrymore, Casey, they're actually talking to him on a phone, and they never actually met him.
Yes. Yeah. Who is the voice? It is Roger L. Jackson.
There you go. Well done, Roger. So best voice, Roger L. Jackson. I give my award to. I also say best scream goes to Neve Campbell. I think she had the best one. Best line I enjoyed was, "My mom and dad are going to be so mad at me." From Stu, after he asks Gail Weathers if she called the police, and she said, "You bet your ass I have." My dad and
he's been revealed as a killer. His parents are going to be mad. Yeah, he's
so
not
mad.
A serious character. He's
not a serious character. He did have another good one. Was, "Billy, you've cut me too deep. I'm dying here." I'm like, oh, Stu. And is that award goes to Linda Blair of The Exorcist. She played an obnoxious reporter, quote unquote.
There we go.
So, Chloe, did this film hold up, or did it hold up or live up to its reputation?
I mean, the way I'd interpret this question is kind of, is it worth watching?
Yes.
Because I think it's not for me to say, does it hold up to its reputation? Because I think it's had so much influence
Yes.
since. For me, it's not a film made for me. It is a film made by and for horror nuts, horror fans. What do you call a collective of horror fans? I don't know. A gore
Or
of a slashing.
a coven. A horror coven.
A coven, maybe.
Sure.
You know, they're going to absolutely geek out on the many, many, many film references, and that was really highlighted in the reviews at the time. That this is exciting if you're a film reviewer, because it's like, here's a reference. The number of films that are referenced throughout this film is sort of endless. You know, it's like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, Prom Night, The
Yes.
Exorcist, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho, Hellraiser. And there's a whole entire list, which I'm going to put in the show notes just because
It's a lot.
for sake of completion. For me, though, that kind of self-referential aspect feels a bit played out, if I'm really honest, as a viewer looking back on it. I think maybe I would have been impressed at the time, or maybe it just would have gone over my head. But yeah, that kind of ironic meta aspect, I think, has kind of permeated everything, you know, particularly things like Marvel movies. It's so ironic, you know, and that is Kevin Williamson's influence. As I was watching it, I was thinking, God, they sound like Dawson's Creek characters. And lo and behold. So I appreciate at the time that there was this kind of ironic, self-referential style felt really kind of fresh and exciting. And it's really kind of playing into that lineage of films. And that it gave the genre a shot in the arm at the time. And you don't get to film number 7 without doing something right. So I appreciate it. But I suppose for me, I found the end sequence, the repeated "watch out, he's not dead yet" aspect just a bit deadening. Well, you know, pun intended, I guess. You know, it's like the same joke being played again and again, and I started to be a bit like, okay, right, can we just end now? And so, yeah, the fact that they're remarking on it means to me there's no shock value left by the end. But I'm not the target audience for this, you know, and I think that's probably why I was more impressed with the opening sequence, because it was just so gory and it was much more out there, and it did subvert my expectations with Drew Barrymore being, you know, deaded. And so it went further and more explicit than I expected, and so for me that ending did not hold up.
Yeah. I think for me, I enjoyed rewatching it. I was glad as you said, it was a 90s capsule. It was really fun to rewatch it for me. I liked it more than I thought I was going to like it. Is it worth rewatching, to your point, or watching for the first time if you've never seen it? I think it depends on your taste. I think every recommendation depends on who you're talking to. If you don't like any gore, I wouldn't recommend this to my mother.
No.
You know, she doesn't like gore. So if you don't like gore, even though this isn't at the level as we see today, there still is gore, so I wouldn't recommend it. But I think if you want like a nice 90s capsule, like horror film, slasher film, yeah, this is for you. And I think it kind of does live up to its reputation, but I also recognize it's not for everybody. I watched it, probably won't ever watch it again. Unless like Charlotte's like, I want to see a movie from the olden days, then maybe we'll bring this
like,
out.
Well, this is my culture, my darling child.
This is my culture.
From the olden days before, well, you had the internet and you could apparently call 911 on it. But it was
What?
It was like green font
but what?
on the black screen. Yeah, that's what computers looked like in the olden days. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I think this next question is going to be hard for both of us.
Yes.
So recommendations. If somebody, we always give recommendations on Total 90s Recall. And it's if you like this vibe, actor, film, whatever, however we interpret it. And so I'm going to subvert this question to say I don't actually have a recommendation because this actually isn't my genre. But I was doing some research and I'm going to recommend to myself Cabin in the Woods. I've heard is really good, and it really is kind of a flip on this genre and is for people that maybe don't like gore, but maybe want something more suspenseful. So it's Chris Hemsworth is in it, but it was like he filmed it right before Thor, so he was kind of a no name. So I'm going to recommend for myself Cabin in the Woods as someone who doesn't really like horror in this genre, and also Hereditary. I hear is a huge critically acclaimed. I already mentioned it. Toni Collette again subverts the genre. So those are two films I'm going to recommend to myself and try to tell myself, hold someone's hand, watch it during the day, and watch it as someone who doesn't like horror films
Yes.
and slashers. What about you, Chloe?
Well, I was going to say, I have seen The Cabin in the Woods, and I was going to recommend it, but then I couldn't really remember much about it.
Okay.
So it's not much of a recommendation. But I remember it being pretty good and pretty suspenseful, but it's got that similar thing of an isolated location and horror, ensues. But I remember it being a bit more kind of a puzzle, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm going to recommend Bodies, 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 which is a film from 2022, and the director is Helena Rain. I should have looked up how to pronounce her name. I'm sorry. But she made Baby Girl after that. And it's very much a kind of modern day successor to this kind of post-ironic teen slasher movie. It's kind of like Agatha Christie, but with iPhones. and it has got that sort of thing of it's walking the line between comedy and horror. It's slightly more of a kind of mystery, but again, set in a big isolated house with a bunch of privileged teens who are all kind of frenemies, and there's a bloodbath. There's lots of commentary, but perhaps more kind of commentary on today's times. And the characters are very kind of unserious. Their deaths are often quite unserious. And it has a twist, which kind of left me both kind of like, I did not see that coming. And then also me going, It's a pretty good film, actually. And I think it is very much like it could not exist without Scream.
Ooh.
Also, the nerdy rants made me think of High Fidelity, which is based on a novel.
Another future episode.
I will recommend to myself for my further improvements, I Know What You Did Last Summer and Final Destination, which are horror franchises that have passed me by as well.
Well, we're going to be watching I Know What You Did Last Summer for the show, because that is a
I shall save it for then, yes.
Yeah, 97, 98.
Final Destination, that's a noughties film, I think. But
I think so, yeah.
There was nothing final about it. I think there was another Final Destination last
year
summer or something. Yeah. So these things, they keep on coming back. They're never dead.
Yes,
they're never dead.
I just thought of, I don't know if we would consider zombies horror, but something that subverted the zombie genre that I really like is Zombieland. The first one. I never saw the second one, so I can't comment on that. But Woody Harrelson, Emma Stone is in it. Jesse Eisenberg is in it. And that's another one kind of makes fun of the whole zombie genre and is really fun and approachable.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you so much, Chloe. This was fun.
It was fun. It was a scream.
It was a scream. Oh, ha, ha. And you can have a scream with us every second and fourth Thursday of the month. If you want more Total 90s Recall, you can find us on Instagram at Total 90s Recall. That's Total 90S Recall. You can also email us. What's some future shows we could do? Or what did you think of Scream now that you've rewatched it or are thinking about rewatching it? It's total90srecall@gmail.com. And if you're liking this podcast, please like and review wherever you're listening. 5-star reviews really help our discoverability as we are a new podcast and helps more podcasts like these get discovered and made. That is all. I'm Molly.
And I'm Chloe.
And we'll see you at the movies.